Hi, thanks for coming back to watch. This is Scott Stork with Polaris Law Group and Raymond Chandler, my partner. So we're going to continue our 21 question series of questions we would ask an estate planning attorney if we were hiring one. So a couple of things, just remember to subscribe to the channel, make sure that you get a notification every time we do a new video. But let's talk a little bit about this week's question. So this week's question is, if the attorney does help with funding your estate plan, what do they charge to do so? Ray, do you want to talk about how this works?
So really, again, what is funding? That's making sure your assets are tied to your estate plan properly. So again, we've talked about this before, but if you have your property outside of your estate plan, you have your documents over here, and they don't talk to each other, then it's going to fall apart. So that's why funding is so important in an estate planning world. So why is it important to ask your attorney how that fee is going to be? Again, basically because you need to know what you're paying for. That's always kind of the basis of all this, is you need to know what you're getting into, what the costs are going to be, and what the end result is going to be for you. But kind of in funding side, the biggest red flag we see is if you're not paying for funding, if you don't have a funding fee, because there's kind of two ways that goes. One is, well, there's no funding fee because they don't do the funding. They don't help you make sure that your estate plan is funded, that your assets are tied to your plan. They just leave it on you. Our experience, very simply, is if the client is left alone without any information and without help in funding, then the funding doesn't really work that well. And so if you hear, though, well, we don't charge for funding, that probably means they just don't help you with it either. So you want to make sure that you're digging into that with any attorney that you work with. The other side of that we see a lot of times is an hourly rate. And so that's another red flag we see with estate planning, is that you're going to pay an hourly rate for funding. Unfortunately, funding time-wise, you just really don't know how long it's going to take. You don't have a good estimate. There's a lot of back and forth with the financial institutions to make sure the paperwork is filled out properly and this is done properly and things like that. A lot of questions with the financial institutions, the financial advisors, the banks, things like that. And so not knowing what that fee is going to be at the end could be pretty scary, not knowing how long that's going to take. So the two big red flags on this is they don't charge for it at all, which means they don't help you, or they charge an hourly rate, which means you don't know what it's going to cost you in the end. So Scott, how would we handle that?
Well, how we handle it, first of all, is to actually help with it. So Ray, I don't know if you can speak to the same way I can. When law firms, and most of them don't, when they don't help with funding, it almost never gets done, right? Because it's confusing, it takes a lot of time, things get put in different ways, it tends to be a nightmare. And in response to that, we've developed a way that we help clients with funding so that when we have a client and comes in and plans, we will help them get all of their property, all of their accounts, all of their assets tied to the plan the right way. And it's not just a bunch of simple generic instructions, which you'll get from a lot of places. We actually will take an asset by asset approach. And as I had a client recently tell me, it's just like holding their hand. They need hand holding in order to make sure that this gets done properly, because there's just too many variables with it. We try to do as much of the heavy lifting in the law firm as we're able to, and many of the things we're actually able to do right here. But even the things that we're not able to actually physically do here, it's going to be a much easier process, and we're going to kind of hold your feet to the fire, so to speak, to make sure it gets done. And everything we do, just like with our planning, is done with a flat fee. So you'll know exactly how much that it will cost you to fund your plan before you even sign up with us, because we're going to look at those, your asset allocation, what you own, what property you have, etc., and be able to understand how long and how difficult that's going to be. And so you're going to know what that cost is at the beginning, and there shouldn't be any surprise fees or anything like that afterwards.
So again, thanks for joining us again this time around with our 21 questions we would ask an estate planning attorney if we were going to hire one. Again, the funding question number one is the funding going to get done? And then, of course, what the fee is going to be for that, and so that you know ahead of time. Next time around, we want to talk about that funding fee as well, and talk about verification and what that means, and whether there's a fee for that and things of that nature. So again, like and subscribe to the videos so that you get notification when the next one comes out. I'm Raymond Chandler with Polaris Estate Planning and Elder Law, and this is my partner Scott Stork, and we're glad that we could be here to help you.